So if you own a condo or live in an HOA or a co-op in Maryland, you're probably going to want to listen to this video. I'm sitting down with Jason Cook, Waterstone Mortgage, and we're going to be going over HB107.
Right.
So if you could just give me a basic 30,000 foot overview, what is HB107?
Yeah, Jake, thanks for having me. So HB 107 is going to affect your condos, co-ops, and HOAs. It's a reserve study law that went into effect June of 22, that every HOA, co-op, or condo association has until 10/1 of 2023 to complete a reserve study, meaning they look at your common areas and elements, what needs to be replaced, fixed, upgraded, and the study puts a funding plan. It gives a suggestion for a funding plan on what things, how to pay for that, and what monies need to be in the reserve accounts to accomplish it.
So, and who can do the reserve study? Is it Handyman Joe from 1B down the block?
Yeah, good question.
Right?
Unfortunately not. You have to be licensed to do these and or have done them in the past 3 years. I think it's like 30 of them or something like that that's in the rule. But you have to have experience doing reserve studies, be a licensed engineer, architect, and have the credentials to do so. There's only specific people you can request to do them. And the condo association, co-op, and or HOA association has to be the ones to do the request, obviously.
So where is this coming from as far as the bill?
Mm-hmm.
Is it basically based out of the condo in Florida that fell, and now Maryland is saying, we need to get a little more?
Yeah, it's sort of. So Prince George's County, Montgomery County has had this in effect for a while. And then because of, to your point, the condo collapse in Florida, the authors of that particular bill took it statewide. And they forced it through to the state of Maryland to where now every association club has to have this done. So eventually I think it'll be a good thing, but we're going to have some growing pains over the next couple of years for those associations that might not have the funding reserves and or might not know about what needs to be done or fixed. So there'll be a little bit of growing pains on getting those reserves up to the requirements per what the study would recommend.
And so the big date is October 1st
Mm-hmm.
of 2023,
Mm-hmm.
and that date is they have to have the reserve study completed.
Correct.
By that date.
Correct.
Now does that mean that they, say you get the reserve study done, completed, and it comes back your reserves are low compared to what maintenance needs to be done? Is there a date that they've put in place to have the funding in your reserves?
Yep, there is. So it's 3 years, but that doesn't mean, the way I'm interpreting the law, 3 years for the entire study to be funded, because these reserve studies can go out 10, 12 years, depending upon your either association or where you live. So you have to have it funded within 3 years, but that's going to be the funding plan for the first 3 years. So what that amount is, we don't know. It depends solely on, in the terms of a condo, your building, and what that looks like to get that done.
So it's going to be building by building by building,
Mm-hmm.
depending on what needs to be done. And talking about what needs to be done, so there's a difference between a major, defect in a building, right,
Mm-hmm.
and a cracked sidewalk.
Yeah.
And so how does this reserve study take those things into effect?
Well, from a financing perspective, whenever you're either trying to sell or purchase in a condo, you look at habitabilities, the structural soundness of the building. Is there anything bad that could happen to the building? Hence what happened in Florida to those unfortunate people that were there. But there's that's your deferred maintenance. That's your maintenance items that have to be done. So that's one of the most particular ones we're going to look at. You have, to your point, if you have a cracked sidewalk, that's preventative maintenance. Yes, that's something that needs to be done, that needs to be planned for, but if that's the only thing that needs to be taken care of from a financing standpoint, as long as there's no health or safety issues with that crack, tripping, falling hazards or something like that, not necessarily a big deal as it pertains to financing, but the structural soundness and habitability of the building is.
Right. And then as far as, so we've pretty much been talking about condos, so this does affect condos,
Mm-hmm.
HOAs, and co-ops.
Correct, yep.
And so in Ocean City specifically, it's going to affect, we have chock full of condos,
Mm-hmm.
right? Then there's all different kinds, right? We have a 3-unit condo, we have a 6-unit condo, we have a 100-unit condo.
Mm-hmm.
are all these within the scope of HB107? Is there anything that's outside of that, as far as, we only have 3 units and so this doesn't apply to us?
Yeah, unfortunately, no, not the way we're reading it. The HOAs might get away, and the co-ops, there is language in the law that says if the initial investment in the common elements has to be at least $10,000. So if you're in an association, one of those 3, and you don't have any common elements or they're less than that 10,000 per this rule, you might be exempt from it. However, the vast majority of people will be subject to buildings. Will be subject to.
And then for the HOAs, if we're talking common elements, so maybe you live in a small neighborhood, you don't have a playground, you don't have a swimming pool, you don't have any of that. You might be below the 10,000. Maybe this doesn't apply to you, but for a community like Ocean Pines, where we are right now, it's enormous.
Yeah,
right. So,
you're a tad over 10,000 here.
Yeah. So it's going to be, again, I guess, community by community as far as HOAs and cooperatives go.
Yeah, absolutely.
Depending on what amenities you have and what the threshold is dollar-wise, right?
Yeah, you're exactly right.
And then as far as from a lending perspective, the date of October 1st, 2023, how does that affect you, a lender, before October 1st and after October 1st? What changes are you looking at as far as from the lending perspective?
So state law always supersedes what Fannie or Freddie say we can or cannot do. So the state law is in effect where that reserve study has to be done by that date. So financing post that date, because that question we have, so to back it up, if you're in a condo, as an example, there's a condo questionnaire that we would send out that has to be completed. The questions pertaining to the reserve study, the funding of the reserve study, are already on that condo questionnaire. So after October 2023, and you're going to have to say, yes, you had one done. That's the law. If you didn't, now you have a warrantability issue because you're not in compliance with the state guidance here in HB107. So you have one done, then we're going to see what the reserve study says and what the funding schedule is. So then that waterfalls down to, okay, how's the association going to pay for it? And then how, for any potential buyers, what is that going to do to the condo dues? Is there, for the sellers, a massive special assessment? So what are the financial implications to funding the reserve study? And again, not to scare everybody, but it's building by building, because we don't know what the study is going to show. So this is good to get this word out and talk to everybody about it. And whether you think you got the $10,000 or not, probably look into it just to make sure you're in compliance.
And if the reserve study does come back and say that you do need additional funds, there's nothing in this bill specifically that says how you have to get those. So your condo dues might go up, right? Or you might get just a one big lump sum special assessment, or that gets spread out through 3, or whatever it might be. So that's building by building as well.
That'll be building by building. That's a very good question you brought up, because it kind of leads into, and it does state in here that, I keep putting at the bill, it's what's in front of me, but it does state in here that regardless of if your bylaws, for example, have a cap on whatever your special assessments may be, if the study says you have to have it, this supersedes that bylaw. So yes,
you have to have the funds.
You have to have the funds there. So based off what the study says, what the funding plan is, and then the board would get together and vote on that funding plan. Generally speaking, the ones I have seen in the past few months, specifically with the condos in Ocean City, have been increased condo dues to get the reserve study to amount. I haven't seen any types of large special assessments or anything as of late, but the condo dues I have seen going up.
Okay. So as I'm kind of thinking through this, I from a realtor's perspective, right, you think of the sellers and then you think of the buyers, right?
Yep.
And so if I'm walking through, I'm a seller, I'm in Ocean City, I have a condo, and my condo the association has not yet gotten the reserve study done. Maybe they're in the process of it. If I'm going to sell within this year and I'm say, well, maybe I'll just wait till the fall, there's a difference, likely, or could be a difference between your building could get financed, regular, no problem, you have, or could be a potential where you have a reserve study done, and now the lending for that specific building can change based on what was found in the reserve study.
Yeah, correct. That's a very, very good point, because prior to 10-1, because the rule says it has to be done by. So if you're selling prior to that, we're going to ask the normal questions, look to see the budget, are you meeting the traditional guidelines, have your 10% contribution towards the reserve account. That is all that's being looked at up until that point. 10-1, 2023 and on, now you have to have that done. So now the reserve study and what is said in the reserve study and the financial implications of that will then be involved in the financial decision on the warrantability of the building.
And if there is something found, you may have assessments or your dues go up, and it just makes it harder to sell at that point, potentially.
Yeah, it would change the debt ratio of the buyer, and or the net proceeds to the seller if the seller decides to pay. Everything depends upon the amount. So it will have an impact should there be anything that needs to be funded.
Right, if there's something found.
Yeah.
It's not saying that every building's going to find something.
Correct.
And so, real quickly, without going into the weeds of it, how are condo dues factored into the lending process as far as the debt that a buyer has? If those dues go up by a lot, how does that affect a potential buyer?
Yeah, so that's going to increase potentially, depending upon the potential buyer's income, but it's going to make the carrying cost of the unit higher, which is going to affect the buyer's debt ratio. And debt ratio now, well, as of March 1st, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac have put out guidance to where now the debt ratio will affect the rate and then the overall payment. So it's going to have a cascading impact on your potential buyers and then who can qualify to purchase the property.
So for buyers that maybe they've been looking for a year, they've just started to looking, they're going to be looking in the fall, are you giving any advice to potential buyers out there that pertaining to HB107, what they should be doing, what they should be looking for, anything along those lines of right now compared to October, anything's going to change?
Yeah, so we give a wide range in terms of their buying power. So we'll say, the first question is, where do you want your payment to be? Okay, what does that qualifying look like? That's this. And then we give a range, and I say wide range because we don't know what this will be in terms of any particular building. It's going to be building by building. But I'll say, Mr. Buyer, let's say your condo dues go up by $200 as an example. Let's say this impacts you and you're buying after October, and then the particular goes up $200. This is where your purchase range needs to be with that increased monthly debt. Yeah. So they'll have that range going into it, and it's a constant back and forth and update just to make sure they're in line with where they want to be payment-wise, back to the payment.
Yeah. And not to scare anyone about this, but I think everyone that owns a condo or is in an HOA or co-op in Maryland should at least know about it.
Yeah.
There's, no one knows the likelihood of what your specific building is, what your association is, what's going to happen. They could do the reserve study, right? And nothing happens. They find you have enough reserves, you have nothing wrong with the building.
You're fine.
You're fine.
Yeah.
So not to have everyone, screaming about this and pulling their hair out and got to get out of my condo. But I think it's something that everybody who owns, especially in Ocean City, because it's it's a ton of condos.
Yeah, absolutely.
You at least should know about it. And then as far as if you would like to take a look at HB107, I'm going to have it up on my website. It's jakespencerealtor.com/article/HB107. And have we missed anything as far as,
No, I think we got, thanks for
broad
asking.
spectrum?
I think we got the gist of it, but it's good. Be cognizant of it. Have the conversation, because you don't want to get caught October 1st and not have addressed this, because then you're definitely setting up to have a potential issue, because it's something that as a lender, I'm going to be asking for, where's the reserve study? So definitely look into it. But no, Jake, thanks for having me here today.
Thanks for coming by and helping me explain it. If somebody wants to get in contact with you directly, what's the best way they could do that?
No, thank you for asking. So Jason Cook of Waterstone Mortgage, offices in Ocean City, Rehoboth, and 2 in Ocean Pines. You can find us, you can call me on my cell phone, 443-859-2222, or email me at jcook@waterstonemortgage.com.
Okay, great. I appreciate it.
Jake,
Thanks so much.
Appreciate it.